The Sukhoi Su-27 fighter aircraft, or flanker, is considered a masterpiece of aeronautical design. It brought together the latest advancements of Soviet aeronautical engineering of the mid-1980s and was at the top of the technological pyramid at the time of its debut. Designed from scratch over decades, the aircraft always had significant potential for modernization, which has resulted in several variants that have crossed over to many air fleets around the world. In true Cold War-era fashion, the flanker can carry most kinds of aerial destruction weapons, from unguided missiles to adjustable air bombs. Still, the Soviet twin-engine Supermaneuverable fighter aircraft had a particular objective: to outmaneuver its American twin. And it finally had a chance to do it, almost 25 years after it was first developed. Air Superiority Fighter. In 1969, the Soviet Union learned about the United States Air Force FX program, which resulted in the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle, a twin-engine, all-weather tactical fighter aircraft designed to meet the service's need for a dedicated air superiority fighter. As was common with the Cold War's usual development cycle, the U.S. Air Force F-15 was designed to go face-to-face with the Soviet MiG-25, an interceptor born out of the need to protect the motherland from the American B-70 bomber, capable of Mach 3 speeds. Realizing that the upcoming American fighter jet would represent a significant technological advantage over the already existing Russian aircraft, the Soviet General Staff issued a requirement for an advanced frontline fighter. While specifications were quite ambiguous, it was clear that the Air Force wanted a new fighter design capable of outperforming the F-15, calling for long range, good short field performance, outstanding agility, over Mach 2 speed, and heavy armament. The aerodynamic design for the new aircraft was carried out in collaboration between the Sukhoi Design Bureau and the Russian Central Aero-Hydrodynamic Institute. The famous Soviet manufacturer began working on their 10th design that same year, led by chief designer Mikhail Semenov, with the goal to create a highly agile fighter with sophisticated technology, including a fly-by-wire control system. Still, development was slow, as the designs displayed several crucial deficiencies. When the first attempts failed, Semenov took a radical decision in 1977 to start over from scratch, keeping only the tires and the pilot's seat. The design prototype finally achieved maiden flight in May, now known as the T-10S-1 project. Still, the fighter jet, designated name Su-27, did not enter operational service until 1985, and manufacturing difficulties kept it from launching in full strength until 1990, 20 years after initial development began. Despite its inextricable relation to the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle, the Su-27, codenamed Flanker by NATO, was initially built as an answer to America's latest fighter jet technology, and became so much more than just a communist twin. The flanker. The Sukhoi Su-27 is a supermaneuverable fighter aircraft with a 2,193-mile range, powered by two AL-31F turbofan engines from the Lyulka Engine Design Bureau. With a primary role in long-range air defense and in constant cooperation with ground-based and airborne control stations, the flanker could operate autonomously in combat over hostile territory, protecting the Russian coast from aircraft carriers and escorting deep penetration strike Soviet-made bombers like the Tu-95 Bear, the Tu-22M Backfire, and the Tu-160 Blackjack. While the aircraft's avionics enabled the pilot to detect, acquire, and attack enemy aircraft correctly, they were no match for American electronics technology. To compensate, the Su-27 made up by having a potential warload of up to a dozen air-to-air missiles mounted externally on 10 different hardpoints. They were designed this way to potentially face off American F-15s armed with American AIM-7 Sparrow air-to-air missiles. This heavy ordnance was made up of radar-guided or infrared heat-seeking missiles, rockets, and bombs. The aircraft is further equipped with a 30mm Gryazev-Shipunov GSH-31 autocannon gun with 150 rounds of ammunition. For crew members, the aircraft's best feature proved to be the unusual cabin layout, as the pilots do not sit behind each other, but comfortably side by side, making long flights easier to endure. While the Su-27 was initially designed for air superiority missions, subsequent variants could perform almost all aerial warfare operations. With the Sukhoi Su-27, the Soviet aviation industry made a substantial leap forward in military technology, as the fighter jet is considered one of the last most significant Soviet success stories, with almost 30 absolute records. last years of the Soviet Union. The first Soviet Air Force unit to receive the Su-27 flanker in June of 1985 was the 831st Fighter Regiment. Based at Mirorod in modern-day Ukraine, the 831st was considered one of the best fighter units in the motherland. Still, Russia finally got the chance to show off its masterpiece of Soviet design to the West at the 1989 Paris Air Show. During the presentation, Sukhoi test pilot Viktor Pugachev, flying an Su-27, performed his signature Cobra maneuver, pitching his blue-colored aircraft up to beyond vertical and skidding it forward on its tail, briefly sustaining level flight at a 120-degree angle of attack. The crowd went wild, and Pugachev proved, 20 years after its initial development, that Sukhoi's 10th design was an extremely agile and maneuverable aircraft that the pilots could control, even at very low speeds and high angles of attack. Only 3 years earlier, the test pilot and the Soviet fighter had broken the world record for rate of climb, when Pugachev managed to reach an altitude of 9,842.52 meters in only 25.4 seconds. However, the presentation at the Paris Air Show shocked Western aircraft developers and influenced their efforts in high angle of attack maneuvering research in the 1990s. As a result, the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor's thrust vectoring and the Boeing FA-18EF Super Hornet's high angle of attack capabilities are a direct byproduct of the Su-27's antics. The exceptionally maneuverable machine officially entered service in August of 1990 and immediately rose to the top of the Soviet Union's aeronautical pyramid, with just over 400 Su-27s in different versions produced for the Air Force. Superiority. By then, the Soviet Union was not the same as it once was, and the Cold War was approaching its end. In December of 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and Russia fractured into 15 separate independent republics. Afterward, only Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan kept the Su-27 flanker regiments in their respective up-and-coming republics. Still, Russia kept the upper hand, as the newly democratic country housed both the Sukhoi Design Bureau and the test complex, where engineers were already developing the latest versions of the Su-27. The aircraft's advantages over its sworn rival were finally demonstrated in August of 1992, when officers from the Russian Air Force's Lipetsk Pilot Training Center visited Langley Air Base at the invitation of the Pentagon. During a series of training matches between the Su-27 and the F-15, the Russian pilots successfully defeated the Americans, proving at last that the Su-27 could significantly outperform the F-15 in terms of maneuverability at subsonic speeds, a crucial element in a close-range dogfight. The Su-27 remained the backbone of the Russian Air Force after the Soviet Union's dissolution, all throughout the 1990s and into the early 2000s. Variants and exports. Many of these aircraft underwent a midlife upgrade, and the fighters were equipped with a new avionics fleet, transforming them into the redesignated Su-27SM. These modernized models were also complemented by a small batch of newly built Su-27 SM-3s with improved avionics and mission equipment. Because Russia also inherited the factories that built the Su-27's airframes and engines, the government was in a critical position for the export market, with Russian leadership offering an aircraft with a similar performance to the F-15 with a $30 million price tag. The Sukhoi Bureau even offered financing plans, often accepting bartering offers for commodities in exchange for the jet fighters. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, the Su-27 became Russia's most successful export products, at a time when the post-Soviet economy bankrupted many of the nation's industries. Among the export models was the Su-27SK, developed for China and similar to the Flanker B, but with additional air-to-ground capabilities. Soon, Beijing also began producing a licensed version of the Su-27, but this model was reverse-engineered to such an extent that it angered Russia. The Indian Air Force also owns licensed local production, with the delivery of their first 140 models in November of 2004. Other owners include Mexico, Indonesia, Vietnam, and 2 private entities in the United States. In addition, as a result of the Soviet divide and the later export era, the Su-27 flanker has taken part on opposite sides of several global conflicts, like the Eritrean-Ethiopian War of 1999. Technological cycle. The first batch of naval flankers, developed and modified for Soviet Navy's aircraft cruisers, entered service in 1993. They are known as the Su-27K and the Su-33, with NATO reporting name Flanker D. By 1998, about 24 Flanker D carrier-based aircraft were in service with the Russian Naval Aviation Service, employed as a fighter aboard the Navy's only carrier and flagship, Admiral Kuznetsov. To this day, the Sukhoi Su-27 Flanker is considered by many as one of the best air superiority fighter aircraft of its time, and it further validated the Soviet manufacturer's long list of successes. Russia plans to eventually replace the Sukhoi Su-27 with the Sukhoi Su-57, the first aircraft in its military service designed with stealth fifth-generation technology and built to potentially compete with its American rivals, the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning II. According to military expert Alexei Leonkov, the Su-57 can easily outperform its U.S. counterparts, as it has better systems, robotics, radars, and electronic warfare equipment. For almost 100 years, Russia and the United States have pushed each other's boundaries, and this never-ending cycle only proves that some things never change. Thank you for watching Dark Skies. If you liked our video, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with a friend. And for more stories about the creation, development, and operational history of military aircraft around the world, subscribe to this and all of our Dark Documentaries channels. Stay tuned.